Hello everyone! In this episode, we'll be sharing two recipes, stir-fried beef with coriander or 香菜炒牛肉, and garlic steamed prawns with noodles or 蒜蓉粉丝蒸虾. We'll start by preparing 50 grams of coriander. We'll need to cut off the roots, but the roots are edible, so keep them. There's some dirt on the roots, of course, because that's the part of the plant which grows under the soil, so pluck off some of the extra roots, and we'll simply give it a good wash. Cut off the bottom bit of the root, and you can save that. There may be some residual dirt on the stems of the coriander, so simply give that a rinse too. Note that in America, coriander is also known as cilantro. We'll pluck the leaves from the coriander and set those aside. We'll then cut the stems into segments. We'll save the leaves for garnish later, and the stems will be used for stir frying. Keep the roots, and we're going to cut it into small pieces. You'll also notice I have some garlic and a few bird's eye chilies. We'll crush and mince the garlic cloves. Add the garlic together with the sliced coriander root. And we'll slice the bird's eye chilies into little pieces as well. These will form some of the base seasonings for our coriander stir-fried beef. Prepare about 30 grams of spring onion whites and cut those into segments. These will be stir-fried together with the beef as well for additional texture and color. We'll prepare some green parts of spring onions as well, maybe about 15 grams. These will be used for the steamed prawns, alright? So keep those aside for now. Alright, now we've got a pretty big piece of ginger. I'd say that's about 60 grams of ginger. We'll set aside a small portion, which we'll crush later. And then we'll take a few slices of the ginger, which we'll then cut into julienne. We'll fry the ginger and put it on top of the noodles at the end when we cook the steamed prawns. Here I'm saving a little bit more of that ginger for the ginger julienne, because I only need a bit of ginger left for this next part. Cut that ginger in half because it's a bit too thick. Continue making ginger julienne until you're happy with the amount you've got over there. I made about maybe 25 or 30 grams. That small piece of ginger, cut it into a few pieces and mince it up. For this little bit of ginger here, we're going to need to mince it pretty finely. This is because we're going to use it as a base flavor for our prawns and our noodles. So if you wanted to stick to the noodles and the prawns well, you're going to need to mince it pretty finely. And finally, for that ginger, the two big pieces, we're simply going to cut them firstly along the long way for thick strips, and then at an angle for diamond-shaped pieces. This makes them easier to stir-fry, adds a bit of ginger flavor to our coriander stir-fried beef, as well as provide some texture. 2 whole heads of garlic, separate the cloves. If you just pat each garlic clove, it will be very easy to remove the skins. These garlic here that we've got, a lot of it, we're preparing it for the prawns. So take your time with this. 2 whole heads of garlic. Alright. Give the garlic a second pat, and then mince it up finely. Take your time with this, because again, it needs to be finely minced. Since this is a fairly large quantity of garlic, feel free to use a food processor if you prefer. We'll also mince up a few bird's eye chilies here. Now, in the Cantonese classic dish, there are no chilies. However, I like a little bit of spice, so I decided to mince up a few chilies. If you don't like spice in this dish, you can feel free to omit the chilies for this. Garlic steamed prawns with noodles is a classic Cantonese dish. And it's one that my mom especially loves, which is why I decided to make it today. We'll prepare 150 grams of dried sweet potato noodles, in which we'll rehydrate with a little bit of hot but not boiling water. Traditionally, this dish is made with rice vermicelli, but I opted for sweet potato noodles due to their bouncier texture and their ability to absorb sauces well. You may choose your own noodles of choice. Allow those noodles to soak for 15 to 20 minutes. We'll prepare a piece of flank steak that's a little bit over 200 grams. We need to trim off the fat and silver skin. And then the amount of meat left should be about 200 grams. You can identify the grain of the flank steak very easily, so make sure to slice against the grain later. But firstly, let's remove the excess fat and silver skin. Now I've got a mostly cleaned up flank steak. Because the grain is running along the short side, we're going to cut it into 3 pieces to make it a bit easier to slice. Rotate one of the pieces 90 degrees and we'll start taking slices against the grain. Each slice should be a thickness of about 3 millimeters. We'll cut at a diagonal to increase the surface area. By slicing thinly, we can have more tender meat as well as increase the volume of the dish. Allow the beef to soak in some ginger and onion water so that we can clean out the myoglobin from the beef. We're not going to throw away that fat and silver skin though. We're going to mince it up into little pieces and we're going to set those aside. The reason we do this is so that we can add additional beef fragrance to the dish. However, you may opt to skip this step if you have people who can't chew. We'll rinse out that meat a little bit. Once the myoglobin has been washed off with the beef, squeeze out all the water and then drain that murky water. Give that beef a second squeeze because it's extremely important that the beef is dry before we marinate it. Wet beef will not marinate well. We're going to need some egg white here. So we've got the meat, the minced up beef trimmings that we're adding for extra fragrance, and some egg white. Let's get ready to marinate the beef. For 200 grams of flank steak like this, we'll need half a teaspoon of salt, a quarter teaspoon of sugar, which I'll add later, white pepper. Try not to miss the sugar like I did. Some light soy sauce for a savory flavor. I added about a tablespoon. About a teaspoon of dark soy sauce for the color. and then some oyster sauce for refreshing taste. About a tablespoon of oyster sauce as well, and then mix in that marinade into the meat. Once it's mixed, add half of an egg white and allow that meat to absorb the egg white. The meat will be a bit wet, so add some cornstarch. That's 1 teaspoon of cornstarch to start, and mix that into the meat. The egg white and cornstarch will form a protective layer around the meat, which prevents it from toughening when we fry it. Here I'm going to add 1 more teaspoon of cornstarch. Mix up that beef until it's mostly dried up, feels plump and shiny like that, and you're good to go. And then add a little bit of oil to seal in the juices from the beef and mix that up. If this is too much work for you, you can simply add a half teaspoon of baking soda. Let's now prepare the prawns. I've got 12 nice big prawns here. Now we're gonna do a bit of trimming. We're gonna trim off those little prawn whiskers because they're long and get in the way. And then make a diagonal cut on the tail so that it resembles a phoenix tail. Then we'll cut open the back of the prawn. This step might be difficult to do if you don't have a sharp knife. So if you have a good quality pair of kitchen shears, you can use that to cut through the shell as well. Cut through the prawn just halfway, but not all the way through. This is so that we can stuff that cavity with that delicious garlic later. We'll soak that prawn in ginger and onion water to get rid of the fishiness and also to pull out that vein easily, alright? Because you want to get rid of that gunky vein. The bottom of a prawn, by the way, has a nerve ending that does not need to be removed. So we'll repeat this with the rest of the prawns. Simply cut it open, remove the vein, and soak it in ginger onion water. Once all the prawns have been handled, we'll go to the noodles. We've drained the noodles and they've plumped up quite a lot. We'll add half a teaspoon of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of sugar, some dark soy sauce. That's about 2 teaspoons. We'll add about a tablespoon of light soy sauce. And again some oyster sauce. Also about a tablespoon. And then we'll mix that marinade into the noodles. I tried using chopsticks here, but honestly, using your hands is a bit more fun. Okay, now take out those prawns from the water, drain them out, and just lay them in a circle around the tray. As you can see, that head is falling off, which means that prawn isn't quite as fresh as the other ones. My choice of head-on and shell-on prawns is to ensure maximum freshness, and also because I just think it presents itself better. Not to mention that peeled prawns get overcooked easily. Once your prawns are arranged in a circle like that, we'll leave that aside and get ready to cook. We'll cook the coriander stir-fried beef first, so heat up the wok until it's smoking, and then add 4 tablespoons of oil. We'll grease that wok a little bit. Turn on the exhaust hood. Once the oil's up to temperature, we'll add in our beef. Splash some oil on top of the beef so that it cooks. And stir that. Do not stir the beef immediately, as otherwise the coating will come off of the beef. Once the beef is just cooked through, drain out that beef, but leave the oil in there. Heat up that oil until it's rippling again. We're going to use some of that oil to splash onto the minced garlic, ginger, and chili that we're going to top the prawns with later. Splashing them with oil now will help us awaken the spicy flavors of those ingredients. So a little more oil. we'll stir that up. Set that aside, and then now we'll add in the minced beef fattened and silver skin. We'll let that sear. We'll add in the diamond-shaped ginger pieces and stir-fry those. We'll then add in the minced garlic, chilies, and coriander root. This will impart a base spicy flavor to the beef later. Add in the spring onions. Once they start to smell good, add the beef back in and stir it around so that it absorbs all of those spices. Right now this just looks like a regular beef stir fry, but that's because coriander should only be added at the end. Turn the heat down and drizzle in a tablespoon each of light soy sauce and black vinegar from the side of the wok. This will add additional savoriness as well as a little bit of refreshing acidity to the meat. Add half a teaspoon of chicken powder, which you can skip if you don't like monosodium glutamate, and then add in those coriander stems. Turn the heat back up just so that we can cook the coriander stems just enough, but we don't need to cook them for very long. Turn the heat back down, and we'll drain that meat onto a serving plate. The leaves of the coriander will be added later when we serve. We'll drain out some of the excess oil from the dish. And then we'll add in our julienne ginger, which we'll fry, and then top the noodles with later for our stir-fried prawns. Not stir-fried prawns, sorry. Steamed prawns with garlic and noodles. Alright, turn the heat down. Now we've got the prawns here. Each prawn, we're going to stuff it with that garlic, ginger, and chili mixture. You're going to have a lot more mixture than you need for each prawn, but we're going to simply top up the rest of the noodles with that extra garlic. We'll also drain out that fried ginger and put those right on top of the noodles. I've cleaned out the wok of excess oil and just added some water to it. It's a bit dirty since the water has deglazed the bottom of the wok, but that's fine because the water's only purpose is to facilitate steaming. Put a separator into the wok and then put the plate on top. As you can see, the garlic is covering the prawns and the noodles with some fried ginger right on top. The prawns are all facing head outwards. We'll turn the heat up until the water's just simmering. And we'll cover it with a lid and let it steam for 6 minutes. That's all you need. 6 minutes and you can take it out and serve. And there you have it. Coriander stir-fried beef, where we've added the coriander leaves and sesame seeds at the end, and garlic steamed prawns with noodles topped with the spring onion greens. Hope you enjoyed.